morning, everybody. We'll get started here in about 2 minutes. 2 minutes. Give everybody a chance to get in here. We're going to be going through the most important part of the 21-point checklist. If you can nail this portion, your income will be as unlimited only by the amount of hours that you can work in the day. So we'll go through this and make sure you completely understand it. Get started here in a little over a minute. Good morning, everybody. We'll get started here in just a little over a minute. Good morning, everybody. We're waiting for everybody to get dialed in here. We'll get started pretty quick. Boy, that's a long minute. Get started here in just about 30 seconds. In fact, we'll just go ahead and get started right now. So, first thing I wanted to talk about is this graph, because this graph, if I walked into your client's office, walk through this graph with them, and you do not have a huge portion of your money in FIAs, what's going to happen to that client? Gone, give me a G, or stay with you, give me an S. So this is showing you the S&P 500 with no fee. If it had an S&P 500 with no fee, are you making any money? No, so none of you do that. If I go to S&P 500 with a 1% fee, if you're less than 1%, well, you can extrapolate between these. Warren Buffett with a 50% participation rate, Warren Buffett with a 9% trigger, Warren Buffett with a 10% cap, starting in the year 2000, 397,000 with no, at the end of 2024, 397, so 100,000 grew to 397 with no fee. Obviously, that does not pertain to any of you guys because you make no money doing that. So, with a 1% fee, it's 312. So let's split the difference. Say you're charging a 0.5% fee. Well, then what would you be? It'd be 350. So 350. So not 397 because you have to charge fee to make money. Maybe you're not charging 1%, you're charging a 0.5%. Well, then we'd be between these two. So it'd be somewhere around 350, right? Okay, Warren Buffett, 50% participation rate, 405. Would your clients rather be in the market up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down, or and make 350 or 405? And what's it, guys? When it comes to the FIA, let's see if anybody can get this. And this is opinion. This is not fact. This is opinion. So I'd be interested. Maybe you guys will come up with a better one than me. What is the number one reason? Even let's say that instead of the Warren Buffett option, instead of FIAs actually performing better, which we're going to see they do by a large margin. So let's say that they performed exactly the same as the S&P 500, not blowing the S&P 500 out like we're showing here, but exactly the same. Why would your client still, as a retired client, still be in the FIA? Let's see how many of you can get this, or have a better idea than me, maybe. Why? Even if the S&P 500 and the FIAs performed exactly the same, no risk to loss. Okay, Steve, you got no risk to loss, but I'm looking for something even more specific than that. What is the importance of no risk to loss to a retired person? Because downside protection, June, yeah, you're all right. Okay, now you're getting closer, Steve, but you're on the edges of what I'm looking for. So I think you have the answer, but I wanted to state it in different ways. Steve said lifestyle. What do you mean by lifestyle? What risk does the FIA protect lifestyle? So I think you got it, but here's what I'm actually looking for. Sequence of return risk. Because will somebody in the FIA ever be withdrawing money in a down market? Would somebody in the FIA ever be withdrawing money in a down market? And even if the market's done unbelievably well, if there's some major downturns, we've seen this over and over and over. I've taught this for the last 30 years. Even if the market over the last 10 years has done well, but there's a couple of major downturns mixed in with those 10 years of returns, can somebody run out of money? Yes, and it's because of sequence of return. And with FIAs, you do not get that. So, and I have to back up here a second. How many money managers beat the S&P 500 year over year for more than 2 or 3 years in a row? Yeah, none. We got over and over and over. Yeah, any particular year, yeah, maybe even any particular 2 years. But the more years you go, the slimmer that list becomes. And I won't go into this, but I'll show you the guys that have beat. There have been some people that have beaten the market. One guy won the in 2010 won the top money manager for the decade of 2000, so 2000 to 2010. Guess what happened to him in 2011? When the market went up, guess what happened to his portfolio in 2011? Yeah, negative 43%. Everybody else made 11% in 2011. He lost 43%. So that decade, was it because he knew what he was doing, or a combination of it, he knew what he was doing and luck? And when luck turns on you in the market, guess what? You get clobbered. Pretty. So here's the thing. This is better than your money manager. I'll just tell you straight out. And if you want to bet, I'll bet you 100,000 to your 10,000 that your S&P 500 will beat your money manager over the next 10 years. Oh, but you know, I have had people argue. My money manager sends out these nice glossy brochures, and I get them in the mail from people all the time trying to get my money, showing me that they perform better than the market. When you dive in, and when analysts have dived into those glossy brochures, what do they find that those money managers are doing in their glossy brochures? Is it ever from January 1st? Andre's got it. They choose specific time periods. That's exactly what they do. They choose specific time periods. So I'm going to jump back in here again. So we agreed you have to charge a fee. Maybe it's not 1%, so let's put the difference, say 350 versus 405 versus 432 versus 439, with no sequence of risk returns, with no heartburn, with no worry about having conversations about why their accounts are down. So guys, if you do not have this laminated and carry it with you at all times, you are walking away from business. Hell, if anybody asks me what I do for a living, I'm going to use my unique selling propositions, right? But the unique selling proposition I like most is I can increase your rates of return. I can increase your income, retirement income from your investments by 25%, all the way up to doubling it with no risk to principal. And you don't even need to move your investments. And they say, how to do that? So I'll show you that. But can I also show you, well, what happened if you did move your investments? I mean, if you showed them this, how much could you sell? If all I did, guys, what if I had a seminar? Now, again, trying to get this through compliance, I don't know what your luck's going to be. But if I had a seminar, filled it with 50 people, and did nothing but for 20 minutes walk through this graph, how many appointments am I going to get? Better yet, if I do an FIA presentation in that seminar, whether it's a webinar on Zoom or a seminar live, I'm walking through how an FIA works, and then at the end say, would you like to see how it's performed over the last 25 years? And then show them this, how many appointments am I going to get? And how many sales am I going to get? And I'll break my rule here, because I say never sell a product on the first appointment, but would we be able to sell a product on the first appointment with this presentation? Yes. So please, if you're not using it, use it. Okay, now into the real thing we want to talk about today, which is 200-point checklist. We've been taught as salespeople since we got into the business of sales to find the client's hot point. Find the client's hot point, then hit it, hit it, hit it. What do I think about hot points, guys? Do I ever look for a client's hot point? Hot button. Got one answer that's right. Do I ever look for the client's hot button? Tom's got it right? Dale's got it right? No, I don't. Throw me some possible hot buttons that people have. Throw me some possible hot buttons that people have. Paying too much in taxes. Not getting high enough return. Paying too much in fees. Want higher returns. Yeah. Hate annuities. Fear of outliving their investment. Yes. So these are all hot buttons they could have. Now let me ask you a question. Do all of your competitors have solutions for too much taxes? Have competitors have solutions if the client hates annuities? Have solutions if the client wants to make a higher rate of return? Does every 100% of your competitors have answers to those hot buttons? They do. So we do not pursue the hot buttons. See, their advisor can fix it. And that, remember when the first year when I figured out how to get in front of people, and I got in front of 301, or got in front of 301 people, 101 case analysis, $32 million, and closed $800,000. 300 people, 101 case analysis. I did work for 101 people and only $32 million and moved $800,000. Why? Because what they do is they all implemented what I recommended. They just did it with the current guy. Because do people like confrontation? Do your clients love confrontation? No, they hate it. And even if their advisor is kind and helps them move the money, do they have to tell that advisor, I know we've worked together for a long time, but I no longer like or trust you enough to manage my money? They have to do that. You know, I make the joke, and Jeff and I used to make the joke that our wives, when we want to move from a garbage service to a different garbage service because it's cheaper, guess who has to make that call? Now, do we have a relationship with the garbage people? No. Have we ever met them? No. Have we even spoken to them? No. So is there really any risk here to offending the people? No. But still, our wives would make us make the phone call, because even something as small as moving garbage service is confrontational. So people don't like confrontation. Leaving the current guy is confrontational, so they're not going to do it. How about hassle? Do people like hassle? No, they hate hassle. They hate hassle. So people hate confrontation, they hate hassle, and is moving their money hassle? Yeah. Fill out a form. They have to learn to work with a new person. They have to learn a new methodology of interacting with that new person. They have to worry about that money moving from one place to another. Is it going to get lost? So it's full of hassle, it's full of confrontation. So they will do anything possible to stay where they're at. So that year that I got in front of 32 million, moved 800,000, those people, they sent me thank you cards, gift baskets, fruit baskets, said, if my guy ever retires or dies, you're my guy. You know who's sending me bigger fruit baskets and gift baskets? My competitors, because they're like, thanks, Mike, you just sent, my client just came in, wanted to move all this money, I made all this, and I didn't even have to do any work. You did all the work for me. So fixing a hot button, I don't care if it's fees, return, taxes, Social Security, whatever hot button you want, and you cannot get them to move it because they're going to move back with their current guy. They're going to go tell him this is a problem and he's going to fix it. So what's the one thing that their current advisor cannot fix? What is the only thing that their current advisor cannot fix? Aha, you got it. Trust, 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 trust. And see, that's what puts people's brains on fire. That's why people would actually take time. They're in Cancun. They would take 2 hours on the phone, because it was before Zoom, but 2 hours on the phone with me, setting up, moving those monies. Now, I had never in my life, in 8 years of being in practice, never had a client who said, okay, I'm going to go ahead and move this money, even though I'm going to be on vacation, I'm going to take time off and move the money. No, I had people faxing me from the business office in their resort to move money. Why? Because when you distrust your advisor, it's like, this guy I trust forever, he's been screwing me. What happened? When that seed is planted in somebody's head, what happens? Have any of you ever been burned by a love interest? Is that something you can just turn off? Oh yeah, they really took me to the, oh, they really, is that something you can turn off? Or is that something that burns in your brain? You can't go to sleep. You can't, it's just, you're thinking about it all day long. And guys, their relationship with their advisor they're married to them. It's the same type of relationship. So when they find out their spouse has been screwing them, is that something they can say, I'll deal with it when I get back from vacation? If you find your spouse is cheating on you, that's something you say, I guess that's a problem, but I got to go to Cancun first, and I'll go ahead and deal with it when I get back. Is that how you can deal with that, or is it a fire in your brain? And that's what we need to do, is light that fire in their brain. So the 21-point checklist is not about the 21 things they're doing wrong. What is the 21-point checklist about? What is the 21-point checklist about? It's not about 21 things. It's about one thing and one thing only, which is what? Trust. Yes, Tom, trust. Andre, Steve, trust. So we need to know, is it working? When we're doing the 21-point checklist, we need to know, is what I'm trying to accomplish working? And so what we do is, what you want to do is go to the 21-point checklist page on our site, and then you're going to want to go to 21-point checklist. What is the end goal for each of the 21-point checklist topics? So end goal meaning, what do I want the client to say in order for me to know I can go on to the next point? Because if I'm talking about point number 5 and they don't see what they're supposed to say at the end of point number 5, what will I do? Go on to point 6 anyways? No, I stay at point 5 until they say what they need to say. So let's go through those points. So when you click this is what's going to show up. It's going to show you what the moral of the story to each one of these points that we talk about in the 21-point checklist meeting. So what we need to listen for. So we have the introduction. During the introduction, what do I want them to tell me? I want them to tell me that this meeting is not about finding a solution. It's about finding out what I like and what I don't like about my current situation. Why do we want them to say that? We want them to say that so they can't say something else at the end. What do we not want them to ask at the end? Well, how would you fix it then? If they do ask that, I can say recall, and there's a magic thing that happens with recall. It goes all the way back to when we were in grade school, and you were daydreaming, looking out the window, and then you ask the teacher a question, and then the teacher says, recall, we just talked about that about 5 minutes ago. What do you do at that point? Do you fight the teacher, or are you kind of cowed and embarrassed by that? And just assume whatever that the teacher, do you argue with the teacher that they didn't cover it 5 minutes ago, or do you assume that, oh yes, we did cover that 5 minutes ago? You assume, well, you shoot, dang, right? Yes, they caught me daydreaming. So when I say, they ask at the end of the meeting, what do you recommend? Well, first of all, why do I not want to go into what I recommend? Why do I not want to give a commercial to what I'm going to recommend? Can you sell a FIA in 2 minutes? No. And if you try, will they go home and try to figure out what that is? Yes. And is the internet going to tell them that what you're recommending is the best thing since sliced bread? Or is the first organic page of organic search is going to say, don't do that. Don't buy an annuity till I did. Don't do that. You don't want them to research what you're going to recommend. You never, ever, 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 ever give a commercial at the end of the first meeting. I've seen the worst thing I've ever seen is a guy who did a 98% job. 98%. I mean, he nailed he nailed it. He nailed the 21-point checklist. And at the end, they asked him what he was going to do, and he spent 7 minutes blathering about what he was going to do, and you could hear the whole thing unwind. The whole thing unwind. I guarantee you those people left their current advisor because he did an awesome job of the 20-point checklist. But did they want to go from an advisor that they found out they didn't trust to an advisor who's just selling something? But I just got out of the boiling water. Last thing I want to do is jump into the boiling water again. So he lost that deal. Never give a commercial at the end of the first meeting. And that's so. But I can't just say, well, I'm not going to tell you. So the first thing we get their agreement on is that they're not going to get a solution. This is not about a solution. And we're not going to tell them that. They need to tell me why I can't give them a solution at the first meeting. So if they do ask me, what do you recommend at the end? I say, remember when we first began this meeting, I said, we would have a solution or not have a solution. And they go, oh, that's right, we said not. And why did we say that? Well, because you didn't even know what I liked and didn't like at that point. So why would you even come up with a solution until you knew that? Exactly. So now that I know, guess what I can do? Well, now you can go find me. Exactly. So when you come back, I will have solutions for you. Does that sound like a reasonable way to do business? Yes. And why? Well, because blah, blah, blah. So see how I'm making sure the one thing I don't want to happen can't happen with that. So they need to say this. Now, the second thing I need them to say at the introduction is, I've done all the heavy lifting. And the client saying, I've done all the heavy lifting. Any changes need to be made will be small and easy. Obviously, we want them to say that because they want them to, do we want them to, again, they don't like hassle. If I say there's going to be lots of huge changes, that sounds like lots of hassle. So when I say easy and small, they're like, oh, that's very little hassle. I can handle a little hassle. I just like a lot of hassle. So they need to say these two things. If they do not say these two things at the introduction, what do you not do? You do not go to the next point. They have to say each of these things because each builds. Do we start with the most egregious fault in their relationship with their advisor or the client? No, I used to do that. I used to go right to the risk-reward graph, say, look, you're getting F. Here's why. No, we have to start with the foot in the door. We start out with a big toe in the door, then 2 toes, then 3 toes, then 4 toes, then 5 toes, then the foot. We start out small and build. But if I skip all the small things, I can't all of a sudden kick the door. If I kick the door in, what is their knee-jerk reaction if I kick the door in? To fight back. I can't let them fight back. I don't want to get in that situation. So they need to do this, say this before you move on to the next thing. Next thing, survivor's guide. I need this document so I don't cause my family problems when I die. Will and trust, good to have and update periodically. So these two things, I'm not even having them say anything about their advisor, even thinking about their advisor. They might be thinking, oh, those are nice things to have. But are they thinking possibly, I wonder why my advisor didn't talk about these things? And how much time do we spend on the will and trust, guys? How many minutes do we spend on the will and trust? I've seen people whose trusts were totally effed up. Totally effed up. And Steve, I personally guess how much time I spent on it. Yeah, no more than 2 minutes. More likely 1 minute. Because am I trying to get them to leave their current attorney, guys? Am I trying to get them to leave their current attorney? No. So I have seen advisors like to spend a lot of time on the will and trust. And what are they trying to accomplish? When I listen to the tape and they're spending a lot of time talking about the will and trust, what do you think the advisor is trying to accomplish? They're not trying to get them to leave their attorney. What are they trying to accomplish? Well, some of them are trying to sell trust, yes. But even if they're not trying to sell the trust, yes, Steve, I'm smart. Look at how smart I am. Is that what we're trying to do at this at the 21-point checklist? Are we trying to look smart at the 21-point checklist? No. You're right, Steve. No. Let our actions dictate whether they think we're smart or not. Power of attorney. What do they need to say at the power of attorney? They need to say any advisor doesn't look at that as my power of attorney is a bad advisor. Any advisor didn't look at my power of attorney is a bad advisor. They don't say that, guess what? We stay there and keep asking questions till they say that. So right now, are we attacking their current advisor? No. They're just telling me that I'd be a bad advisor if I didn't do that. Because what we're doing is the connected dots. Guys, you know those connected dot pictures that are out there, right? Like of an elephant. There's a bunch of dots that you connect, and you have to connect them, and it draws it up. But when you look at it, if there's only 5 dots, how hard is it to tell what that thing is? If there's 100 dots and there's 5 dots, with 100 dots, which one are you going to be more likely to figure out what the drawing is even before you connect the dots? With the one with 5 dots or the one with 100 dots? 100, right. It's 100. So the more times we have them to connect the dots, that any advisor that doesn't cover these things is a bad advisor, they go through this mental process. Yeah, you'd be a bad advisor, Mike. Yeah, you'd be a bad advisor, Mike. Yeah, you'd be a bad advisor, Mike. Wait a minute. Yeah, you'd be a bad advisor, Mike. Wait, my guy's not doing that. Yeah, you'd be a bad advisor, but my advisor, no, my advisor's a bad advisor. That's the mentality. They start out with not even thinking about their advisor, but by the time we get through all the non-financial things, they should be thinking in their head. They won't say it out loud, but they're thinking in their head. Well, we're not even talking about you and Mike. My advisor's not doing these things. They're the bad advisor. How much have we softened their relationship with their advisor at that point? Before we go into the point blank, black and white, look at how he effed you discussion. How soft is the relationship at that point? Is it still rock solid, or is it really mushy and soft by the end of the time we get through the non-financial? In fact, with the spouse, many times I found by the time we got to the non-financial, even before we got to the financial, what did the wife had already decided? We're leaving. Why? Why was the wife thinking we're leaving? Because she doesn't care about the money as much as she cares about family, and she sees that their advisor cares how much about family. Not at all, because all the non-financial things are about family, and he didn't do any of these things. We're leaving that effort. Makes sense. So, power of attorney. Anybody didn't look at my power of attorney? He's a bad advisor. 567. Well, that's the medical power of attorney. So we got some subcategories in here. It's the medical power of attorney. They're going to say, well, missing the most important half of my power of attorney, quality of life directive, filing those important documents electronically. I need to file these documents electronically, or I will be forced to use the hospitals, which is not in their favor, not mine, and the quality of life directive. So after they had these mini ones for medical power of attorney, filing, and quality of life directive, do you see how I didn't, for the medical power of attorney, and did I have them say I'd be a bad advisor? Nope. Filing documents electronically, did I have them say I'd be a bad advisor? Nope. Quality of life directive, that's what I do. So I lump these three together, and then I say, any advisor doesn't make sure that there's a medical power of attorney there that's filed electronically with the quality of life directive is a bad advisor. If they don't say that, so do you see how I lump these together, and then I go into what kind of advisor it would be if I didn't do this? Let's see how many of you are on the ball. And I know Steve probably is, because he uses the 20-point check. What's the reason an advisor would be a bad advisor if he didn't cover these things? What's the reason an advisor would be a bad advisor if he didn't cover these things? Steve said access to money. You might be giving me the right answer, but I'm understanding it wrongly. Guys, what is the, if you've done a fantastic job of saving for retirement, maybe saved up $2 or $3 million, what's the one expense that can undermine all of the things that you've saved? What's the biggest expense that you can incur? Yes, medical bills. So any advisor that doesn't spend an awful lot of time making sure their medical and health planning is all the I's are dotted, all the T's are crossed, are they ignoring the one risk that can blow up a retirement? And that's what we want them to realize. So any advisor that's ignoring the one and only thing that can blow up a retirement, is that a good advisor or a bad advisor? So they have to say then, that'd be a bad advisor. Identity theft. Any advisor that doesn't look at that is a what? Bad advisor. So you see, they would go like, yeah, Mike, you'd be a bad advisor. Yeah, Mike, you'd be a bad advisor. Yeah, you'd be a bad advisor, but my advisor's not doing these things. Wait, my advisor's not talking about this either. See how they start to have this change with their thoughts about their advisors. So property casualty, anybody who doesn't look at property casualty is a bad advisor. Umbrella, any advisor who doesn't cover umbrella insurance is a bad advisor. Titling. So now we've gone from any advisor to be a bad advisor to we're going to start to attack their current situation. So with titling, who do we have the client attack with titling? Or what do we have the client to attack with titling? Their advisor? No. Who do we have them attack? Okay, this is the foot in the door technique, where we've now done the non-financial that have nothing to do with money or their investments. And now we're going to start to go still non-financial, but does have to do with their investments. So the first thing we talk about is their company. Oops. My company. See, we don't even go for that. That's right, Andre. Their firm. Company. Their firm. My company had me sign the wrong form on purpose so they could make money on me when I'm dead. Then they want to do the same thing to me, to my kids. They need to say this. If they don't say this, you don't move on till they do say this. But you see how we went from not even mentioning their guy to mentioning the company until we're finally now going to mention their guy. Now, with their guy, the next thing we talk about is what? Beneficiary. Are we saying the guy is screwing them with the beneficiary? What's the motive? What's the motive for the advisor? We want the client to say, what's the advisor's motive for not having the beneficiaries been done correctly? What's the motive? And this is where that's right. He doesn't care, Steve. He does not care. And this is where the wife at this point is like, he's gone. He's fired. Because what they need to say is, the only thing he cares about is making money. He could care less about my family. And my family is way more important than money. At least that's what the wife is thinking. And we all know that even if we have a church mouse of a wife, when she finally puts her foot down, who gets what? You or her? She could be the meekest, quietest, nicest, non-offensive person in the world, but if she finally decides she wants something, what's going to happen? Yeah, she rules. She wins. So at this point, she's like, that son of a bitch doesn't care about my grandbabies. All he wants to do is make money. We are moving. They have to say that. My advisor cares only about making money. Anything about my family and concerns are simply an afterthought. If it works out, great. If it doesn't work out, great. I don't really care. So see, we started with not even talking about the guy. Now we talk about the company. And then we talk, so it's kind of like this. If he's not doing these 21 things, there's 3 reasons he could not be doing these 21 things. Number 1, he doesn't know. Number 2, he doesn't care. And number 3, he does it on purpose. The thing is it doesn't really matter, because if it's not done, it's not done. But it does matter, because motive matters. Can they forgive the guy for the first 6 or 7 things that we talked about because he didn't know? So he'd be a bad advisor if he didn't cover these things. Well, maybe he just didn't know. Will some people forgive some people won't, but will some people forgive him just because he didn't know? I know for sure they would, because I saw it. That year I got in front of 32 million, I saw them forgive their guy. I'm like, are you friggin' kidding me? And they would forgive the guy. That's right, most, Steve. Then we go from, he didn't care. That becomes then some of the people that would say if he didn't know, when you get to didn't care, now you got some people saying, well, I'm out of here. And then when you get, oh, he did this on purpose, now what percentage of people move? He's been screwing me on purpose. He has been doing these things to make more money. And heck, if he's making more money and I'm making more money, that's cool. But by doing what he's doing, by withholding information, pushing me one direction, he's making more money and I'm making less money. That's something I can't forgive. So now we're a beneficiary. Then we get into, now I have some notes here. For all of the following items on the 21-point checklist, prospects should be thinking this way, because now we're getting into the nuts and bolts. We've softened that relationship up to its mush. Now we're going to have them fine-tuned. He's not innocent. These are not things he forgot to do. These are not things he did because he didn't care. These are things he did to you on purpose. So we want them to say that he put me into things that I receive less from, but I pay more for. I actually get less than I could have gotten. I could have moved someplace else, received more, and paid less. But instead, he put me into a situation where I'm paying more and getting less. So the metaphor for that would be, if you're paying more to be in a Motel 8 to get less, and would you rather be paying less to be in the Waldorf Astoria? I'm going to do this again. If you're in the Super 8 and you're paying more, is that a better deal? Or if your travel agent said, no, I can get you in the Waldorf Astoria and you'll pay less. Where do you think that travel agent's making more money? When they put you in the Super 8 and they're charging you way more than you would pay for a Waldorf Astoria? or if they put you in the wallet of the store and you're going to pay far less. We know. We know. So all of these future things, when we get to the nuts and bolts, facts and figures, he put me into these things where I receive less. Because could they forgive them if they pay more but they got more? Yeah, some people would forgive. But when they find out they got less but they're paying more, that's something that starts to piss them off. He did not show me the things I could have received more from. He didn't show me the alternatives where I could have actually gotten more and paid less. So you're going to use this template over and over and over going forward. Steve, my advisor has me investing things that I receive less from, but pay more for. He never showed me things where I could have paid less and gotten the same or higher return, so he can make more money. You don't move on until he says these things. Now, where are you going to find out exactly what you need, the questions you need to ask to get him to say this thing? Guys, when you watch me do this on the video, do I get Jeff to say these very things? Yes, the script. And Steve, do I get Jeff to say these things exactly like they're laid out here in that video? And Steve, I've asked this to everybody on the call. We spent 2 years going through the whole entire 200-point checklist back from front to back twice. And I kept at the end of every single call where I covered just one of the 200-point checklists, said, now, is Jeff answering this way because he's being nice to me? Or am I asking questions that there's no other way Jeff could answer except this way? Guys, this has been tested hundreds of thousands of times in the last 25 years. If you ask the questions the way I lay them out, because they use the foot, every single point uses the foot in the door. We start small, we build to the end, bam, the climax right here with that you're looking at. They will say this. It's not because we want them to say it, it's because they would look like blithering fools if they didn't say this. Because all the logic we had them want, we don't tell self-preacher teeth. We ask them open questions where they answer little questions, bigger, so they get to, oh, this is what's happening. Interest rate volatility. My advisor had me in bonds that aren't really safe. He told me bonds are safe. They're not safe. And then he's charging me higher fees for bonds when I could have been in something safer that had no fees. He did not show me things that would have been truly safe and that I would have paid less for. Instead, he put me in things that are risky, telling me they were safe, and I'm paying more for them. That SOB. Investment weighting. My advisor has me in too much risk because he makes more money on market investments. He doesn't have me in a properly weighted portfolio because the things that I would be completely safe, I make no money on, or he makes no money on. So the reason he has me in all these risky investments is because if he had me in a good balanced portfolio with equity money and guaranteed money instead of equities and bonds, see, when he's in equity and bonds, he makes money on both, 100% of the portfolio. If he had me in equities and CDs, he makes only half that much. So he withheld this information. Not only did he withhold it, he lied because he told me bonds were safe. I've just explained to myself how bonds work and the fact that bonds can be just as risky as stocks. And yet he was having me believe they were safe. Guys, how many clients buy individual bonds? When they're in bonds, are they buying individual bonds or packaged products with bonds? Yeah, packaged products. So if that's the case, are bonds safe? If you're smart enough to hold on to your bonds in a packaged product, but all the other people around them are selling, what's going to happen to you? You're going to be F. In fact, you're going to be hurt worse than if you don't, because they're moving. So, investment weighting. Tenure. My advisor has me with managers with less experience, and I'm paying more for them. He did not show me that there were managers with decades of experience that I could have paid way less for, such as Berkshire Hathaway, Vanguard, etc. So he could make more money. Turnover. My advisor's been telling me to buy and hold, buy and hold, buy and hold. He's been telling me buy and hold. Don't, because and the reason he's telling me why Not because buy and hold is the best thing. He just doesn't want me to move my money away from him. Because if buy and hold was the best thing, then why does he have me in funds where these accounts are being churned every single year? So he's saying one thing and doing another. What do we think about people who say one thing and then do the polar opposite, and then we find out the thing they're doing that are polar opposite, they make more money? What do we think about those people? Yeah. Risk reward. This is the climax. This is where I used to start, but it was too much, too hard. This is, guys, can it be any more black and white that advisor is, pardon my French, but fucking them when you look at the risk reward scatter plot? When you look at what they could have done with a straight S&P 500 with no fees versus where they have them, is there anything more plain that you've already covered the fees and how much they're paying? Between turnover and fees, they're paying thousands and thousands of dollars a year. They could have been in something with less risk, higher return, and paid nothing, versus higher risk, lower return, and paying thousands of dollars. Is it any more plain than this graph? But you have to build up to it. You can't start there. Diversification. I'm not diversified at all. He had me convinced. The only reason he asked me in all these things is to make it sound complicated. So because if we would have just we look at this at the risk reward scatter plot. Heck, if we would have had just the S&P 500, that's one investment. We would have been paying less. We would have been making more, and we would have had less risk. And guess what? If all I was in was the S&P 500, would I need my advisor? No, I would not. So the reason he has me in all of these investments is why? To make it seem complicated, so I have to stay with him. Now, am I saying that as the advisor, or do I get the client to say this? And Steve, I know you use the script. Does the script get people to say this? I've listened to Steve Staceyford, and he nailed it. So, yes. And is it because I want Jeff to say these things, or when you do the script, do people that you had not known 2 weeks before, Steve, they say it because you follow the questions as they're laid out? See, I'm not diversified at all. Yes, these things complicate, so I'm forced to stay with them. Then at the end, what do? We go backwards. Why? Because what is the only thing people remember? What is the only thing people remember? The last thing that they say. So you're right, Steve. We go back, and this is my double check. I go back from the number 21 all the way back down to, don't ask me why this is 20 and 21. I go into why it is, but that's a whole separate thing. We'll ignore the 2021 right now because there are 21 questions we get them to do. Anyway, so we start at 21 and we go backwards, and they must say what? They must say, had me complicated, so I'd be forced to stay with them. Then they must say, he has me in things with higher risk that I'm paying more for, what it could have been things with lower risk, higher return, and paid less for. They have to say all of these things backwards. Why? Just a second here. Some kind of slide. Get them to say the advisor's motive for each, and they must be 100% certain that they're upset at their advisor by the end. So guys, if they say all those things, what percentage of people will move? I would say, again, it's probably been 7 years since I've done the actual math, but 7 years ago we had a 94% closing ratio. And Steve, yes, you're right, 99% of them move. Why do I say 94% closing ratio, Steve, instead of the actual, which is 99? Because who are those other 6%? People that won't move, or people I've decided, you know what, I had to pull teeth to get them to say these things, and they're exhausting. So I found that less than 10% of the people were people that I could not work with. But it wasn't because they didn't want to move at that point. And it was almost, the wife always wanted to move. The wife was always 100% on board. They were, but if I had to pull teeth with the guy and he was I just like, you know what, F it. You stay where you're at. I don't give care less with you because I'm going to get the other 95% of people, 94% of people. I don't care. So it's not because we couldn't get them moved. It's because if it's too much effort in making $1 million a year, guess what? Did I have the option at that point to say bye-bye? Yeah. So that's what I would do. Make sense? So guys, the scripts work. These people will actually say these things if you ask the questions the way I lay them out. We've got hundreds of thousands of tapes of that. We don't have tapes anymore because we have about 100,000 tapes, but we don't 100,000 times because we've been at it for another almost 10 years since we stopped archiving tapes, and they work just as well today as they did back then. Make sense? So let the client tell you why they no longer trust their guy. And we use it with a foot in the door technique. Start small, and then we get to the point where it's point blank obvious to anybody that that advisor is taking advantage of them. And that's why when I meet with a client and they say they love their advisor, before I invented the 21-point checklist, when they said they loved their advisor, what did I want to do at that point? Met with them for the first time, and they do nothing but gush to move on, right, Tom? So before I created the 20-point checklist, when they said they loved their advisor, I just wanted to move down. I was looking for the people who were dissatisfied trying to move. Because I knew if they loved their advisor, I'm not going to be able to get them to move. Now, when they say they love their advisor, what do I think? Am I happy or sad? Happy. Why, Steve? Why am I happy? Yes, Tom, I'm happy. Why? The script, yeah. And what the script does is this. If I meet a stranger and he screws me, am I mad? Yeah. But am I totally surprised that a stranger might screw me? No, I'm not surprised. But if somebody that I know, I trust, I love, if they screw me, how much more does that hurt? How much angry do I get? How much more does my brain turn on fire? With somebody who hot, blazing fire, that's right. Because if a stranger does that, I'm like, well, that sucks, but figures. I mean, guess I won't trust a stranger again. I should have known better. But when somebody that I've known and trusted for 10 years screws me, I'm like, that came out of the blue. I can't believe they've been doing this and laughing behind my back for a decade, taking me to play golf. Why not? When he's making 15 grand on me and screwing me left and right. Heck, he only pays $100 for my round of golf. He's making 10 grand a year off of me. So I'm happy when they're happy with their advisor because it's going to mean they're even angrier when they find out the guy's screwing them. Make sense? Awesome possum. Thanks for being on the call today, you guys. Have a great rest of the weekend. We'll talk to you all next Monday.